Now, just earlier today, we heard from one of Dee's daughters. Her name was Amber Million. Well, now Dee's other daughter, Rikkell Bock, is on the stand being questioned by the state here on direct examination. Let's go back into court.
Good afternoon.
Hello.
Can you state your name and spell it for the record, please?
Rikkell Bock, R-I-K-K-E-L-L-B-O-C-K.
All right. Ms. Bock, how did you know Dee Warner?
She was my mom.
Okay. How would you describe your relationship with your mom?
Very close.
Okay. And where did you live in relation to where your mom lived on the Munger farm?
Like almost in her backyard.
Okay. I'm going to show her.
Sorry.
Okay. Is that not working?
Yes.
Okay. What road did you live on?
Carson Highway.
Okay, and so your mom lived on the corner of Munger and Karsten?
Correct.
Okay, and so you would describe it essentially in her backyard?
Yes.
All right. And in April of 2021, what were you doing with your house?
A total remodel.
Okay. Did you go to the Munger farm a lot?
Almost every day.
All right. For what?
My mom watched my kids and while I worked, and then she would also watch them sometimes when I would help on the house. She helped me do my laundry. We'd eat dinner there almost every night.
Okay. What about Sundays?
Sundays, pretty much every Sunday we would eat breakfast, but we would always go grocery shopping on Sundays.
Okay, always go grocery shopping?
Yes.
All right, and when you say we would go, who would go?
My mom and I, my little sister, and my kids.
Okay, how many kids did you have at that time?
2.
All right, and when you guys would go for breakfast, who would be part of the Sunday breakfast usually?
Just kind of depended on the day. Sometimes it was just me and my kids and my mom and Lena. Sometimes my boyfriend Dustin would be there with us. Just depended on the day.
Okay, and you're familiar with Dee Warner then, I'm assuming?
Yes.
Okay, and would he be around for Sunday breakfast?
Every once in a while.
Who usually cooked Sunday breakfast?
It kind of depended. If we had it, sometimes Dale would cook it. Sometimes I would cook it. Sometimes my mom would cook it.
Okay. Just so we're all clear, so you're talking about Dale, and I saw you nod your head. So is the Dale that you're referring to, is he in the courtroom today?
Yes.
All right. Can you point to him and identify what he's wearing for the record?
A gray suit.
I'd ask the record to reflect she's identified the defendant.
No objection. Thank you.
Record will so reflect.
All right. So in April of 2021, what vehicles was your mom driving?
She had a black Escalade and a black Hummer.
All right. Was there one that she would drive more? Was it more common for her to drive than the other?
The black Escalade, she drove more.
All right. Were you at the Munger farm at any point in time when your mom had a concern about the Hummer, a device in the Hummer?
Yes.
Okay, and did you actually see that for yourself?
Yes.
Okay, and what did you observe?
I observed a piece or a small device.
Okay. Who actually found that item?
My mom.
Okay, and who's Dustin Lally to you?
My boyfriend.
Okay, was he present there too?
Yes.
All right, was it your mom that found it or was it Dustin that found it?
It was my mom that found it, who showed us and asked what it was.
Okay, and she had that conversation with both of you or just Dustin?
Both of us.
All right, and did you identify that item or did Dustin?
Dustin did.
Okay. Were you ever around your mom and Dale when they would have fights?
I feel like a lot of the fights were over the phone. I mean, I did live there, so I was present. I could hear from my bedroom. Yeah.
Did you have a chance to observe your mom's reactions to Dale when, if they would be fighting and he would try to give her a massage or touch her?
Yes.
All right. And can you describe those reactions?
Uncomfortable.
What do you mean by uncomfortable? What would she do?
Almost freeze.
Okay. Do you recall a time when, in March of 2021, your mom and Dale and Lena went to Florida?
Yes.
Okay, and do you know what they drove down there?
The camper.
All right. And when they came back from Florida, do you recall seeing the Hummer at the house?
Yes.
And where was that parked at?
Outside of the sliding glass doors.
Okay. Your Honor, may we approach?
All right. While they go to that sidebar, let me bring in my guest joining us this hour, trial and family law attorney Michelle Thomas. Michelle, great to see you as always. I want to get your general thoughts on this case. On one level, you have the defense saying basically, look, he may have been not such a great husband, but again, that's not enough for you to convict him of murder in this case, while the prosecution is saying we have tons of circumstantial evidence that point to him and only him as the one with the means, motive, and opportunity.
Yeah, good afternoon, Michael, and thanks so much for having me. I think one of the problems here is that bodies don't just turn up on your land, just out of the thin air. And so if the defense wants to say they have the wrong person, I think they're going to have to put forth evidence regarding an alternate possible theory or something, because otherwise the circumstantial evidence is pretty strong. To the extent that the prosecution paints this as a concealment issue that can go toward consciousness of guilt if they allege or present evidence that suggests that he's the one that buried the body, on the land. And so that is a problem that the defense is going to have to create some sort of explanation for. Otherwise, the story just doesn't add up that he was the last one to see her and most likely the last person to have been able to commit this crime.
Yeah, at this point, it sounds like, as far as their opening statement was concerned, the defense is really just throwing out there the fact that there were 7 to 9 other people on the property at the time that this was supposed to have all gone down. The killing, but also the cover-up, where he sort of welded this big old tank together, moved the body, did all this. There were a bunch of people. No one, he didn't restrict anybody's movement, and no one saw anything out of the ordinary. It sounds like to me you're saying that's not going to be enough. They need to have something that truly points to or suggests someone else might have been responsible.
I think so. I mean, obviously the jury is going to contemplate whether the timeline makes sense in this case. However, the prosecution, as we saw, they're painting at least a motive for the jury in terms of this being a marriage in strife and that the victim was looking to get a divorce and some of the comments the defendant allegedly made. And so I do think that while motive is not required, it does set the scene for why this defendant would be the likely culprit of the crime.
All right, Michelle, stand by. We're going to take a break, folks. When we come back, we'll have more key testimony in the murder trial against Dale Warner. Keep it here on Court TV.
Tragic murder of Keith Canero and his entire family.
This one is the most brutal case that I've seen in my experience here.
The Mansion Murders Trial. Live coverage today on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back, folks. Court TV is in Michigan this hour for day 1 of the hidden murder of Dee Warner trial. The 52-year-old went missing back in April of 2021, although it would be years before investigators found her body in a fertilizer tank about 4 miles from her home. Well, prosecutors say Dee's husband, Dale Warner, strangled her to death and then hid her body in that tank but Dale says he had nothing to do with her murder. He claims that she ran off on her own after a fight. Let's go back into court now. Dee's daughter, Rikkell Bock, remains on the stand. She's on direct by the state.
We talked a little bit about where your home was in relation to the Munger farm, so I'm going to go back and show you Exhibit 205. And do you recognize that?
Yes.
Okay, and what's in the bottom of the screen, in the bottom left corner of the screen?
My mom's house.
Okay, and that, the Munger farm?
Yes.
All right. And where's your house in relation to that on the map?
Like almost in the middle of the picture.
Okay, on the right side of the road?
Yes.
Okay. Here, I'm going to approach the witness with some exhibits. Actually, I'm not going to. I'm going to show you Exhibit 12. Exhibit 12, do you recognize that?
Yes.
All right, what's that?
My mom's house.
All right, what side of the house?
The back side of the house.
Okay, so if you're on Munger Road, you would have to go behind the house.
Correct.
All right. Exhibit 13, what's that?
The sliding glass doors in the back of the house.
Okay. Exhibit 14,
The front of the house.
from Munger Road.
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 15,
The side of the house that faces Carson.
okay. Exhibit 16,
The other side of the house.
okay. Exhibit 17,
Inside the garage.
okay. And is that your mom's Cadillac that you were talking about?
Yes.
All right. Exhibit 18,
The Hummer.
Exhibit 19.
Same Hummer.
All right. And is that where your mom would normally keep that Hummer parked, or where would it normally be?
Yes, that's where it was.
Okay. Exhibit 20. Do you recognize that item?
Yes.
What's that?
The JCB loader.
Okay. So when we refer to the JCB, this is what?
Yes.
Okay. Exhibit 21. What's that?
The Kubota.
All right. And that's, it looks like just like a little off-road
Like a utility.
utility vehicle. Okay. All right. Number 6.
The office.
Okay. And is that, so if I'm looking on the left side of the screen, I can see a big bay garage door. Is that also part of the office?
No, it's a barn.
Okay. Exhibit 7.
Like the main office doors.
Okay. And with those doors, are those doors kept locked, do you know?
Yes.
Exhibit 8. Are you familiar with the inside of the office?
Yes.
All right. What is this?
That is the layout of the inside of the office.
Okay, so I see on the bottom of the screen there's, so it says the main office, and then you can kind of see the bottom of the screen where the doors, would that be the front doors that we just looked at on the previous slide?
Yes.
Okay, and then to the left is a conference room?
Yes.
All right. And did your mom have an office in there?
Yes.
Where at?
Right when you walked through the front doors.
So in the part that's labeled main office?
Yes.
All right. And then so if I walk through the doors and I take a right, where am I going?
Down a hallway to like Dale's office or the break room, and then the trucking side.
Okay. Is there another door to get in and out of that office?
Yes.
All right. Where's that at?
It's located in front of like the trucking office.
Okay. Would it be in the front or the side or the back? Do you know?
The front.
Okay. Exhibit 9. Do you recognize this area?
Yes.
All right. And what area is that?
It's like the break room / Dale's desk.
Okay. So the break room / Dale's desk?
Yes.
All right. And is that what we see in the top right corner? Would that have been his desk?
Yes.
All right. Exhibit 10. What's this?
It's just like a side of the house between the office and the house. It's
Okay.
like driveway.
11. What's that?
The sprayer barn.
Okay, the sprayer barn. Do you ever go in there?
No.
Just wanted to get a little bit of layout of the property out there on Munger. So I'm going to take you back to the Saturday, April 24th, 2021. Did you see your mom that day?
Yes.
All right, where at?
Her house.
Do you remember what time it was?
4 or 5-ish
PM?
p.m. Yes.
Okay. Who were you with?
I was with my daughter, one of my daughters.
All right. Who was at the house when you got there?
My mom and Lena.
All right. What were they doing?
Lena was sleeping, and my mom was sitting on the chair.
Okay. How did you observe her to look?
Unwell.
Describe that.
Very upset. Almost the shell of herself. Upset.
Okay. Was she crying? Was she doing anything?
Yes.
All right. Did you have a conversation with her about what was going on?
Yes.
All right. Based on that conversation, did she tell you that she had any plan that night?
That she was gonna leave Dale.
All right. Did she say when you say she said she was going to leave him, what was the plan for that night?
She was gonna tell him that she wanted a divorce.
All right. Was she going to tell him anything else?
That she was gonna sell the trucking company.
Okay. Have you had that conversation with your mom before?
Not necessarily in that context, but the sale of the trucking company, no.
Okay. Had she talked about divorce with you before?
Yes.
All right. So that wasn't something that was uncommon?
Correct.
All right. But this was the first you were hearing about selling the business?
Yes.
All right. And what time did you leave the house?
I wasn't there very long, maybe an hour, so 5, 6.
Okay.
I don't even think I was there that long.
All right. Did you have a plan to come back to the house later that night?
It was kind of up in the air. She asked me if I wanted to come back for dinner, but I wasn't sure. So I didn't necessarily have a plan for that night.
Okay. Did you text your mom at all that night?
I did. I texted her like pretty late and told her that we weren't coming.
Okay. When you say pretty late, do you recall about what time it was?
I want to say maybe 11, 10 or 11.
Okay.
I think. I don't remember.
Okay. Do you think it could have been a little earlier than that?
Yeah, could have been.
Okay. And well, if I let you read this report, would it refresh your recollection as to the time?
Yeah.
All right, so great testimony there for the state. Dee was about to leave her husband that particular day. Also, I think this is also key. She was going to sell the trucking business. So again, not affecting the home life, but also affecting the money. We'll take a break. We'll have more key testimony in the murder trial against Dee Warner coming up. Keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. Now back to Michigan, where it is day one of the murder trial for Dee Warner. Warner is charged in the murder of his wife, Dee. Now, she went missing from her Franklin Township home back in April of 2021. Now, Warner, he told police that Dee left after an argument. But years later, investigators found Dee's remains inside of a sealed container in a barn owned by Dee Warner. Let's get you back into the courtroom now. We've been listening to Dee's daughter, Rikkell. She just told jurors that her mother planned to tell Dale that she wanted a divorce when she went home that day, and she was also going to sell that trucking company. She's on direct still by the prosecution.
Just go ahead and read it quietly, and then I'll follow up. All right, do you remember approximately what time you texted her?
It was 21.
Military time, so
Yeah.
about 9 o'clock. Does 9 o'clock
Yeah.
sound right? Okay, fair enough. Did your mom respond to you at all?
I don't remember.
Okay. Do you
Sorry, I
no,
should have
that's
read
okay.
further.
Do you want to read a little bit further?
Sure.
Okay.
Oh,
Did that refresh your memory?
Yes.
Okay, did she respond to you at all?
no.
Okay. All right. Saturday night, what time did you get home? You and Dustin went somewhere after that, after your mom's house, correct?
Dustin wasn't with me when I was at my mom's, but when we were at our house, then we went back to my dad's house.
Okay, and where does your dad live?
Maybe 3 miles from my mom's house.
All right. Would you have to drive by your mom's house to get back to your house?
Yes.
Do you recall approximately what time you drove back by her house?
I think it was like 10:30.
Okay. And did you look over at the house?
Yes.
Did you observe any of the lights on?
Yes.
And at that time of night, was that odd to you? Did that stand out to you?
Yes.
All right. Why?
Because the living room, like, main lights weren't typically on, especially that late at night.
Okay. All right. And did you observe the Hummer?
Yes.
Where was the Hummer parked at?
Behind the house, by the sliding glass doors.
All right. And how did you observe the Hummer parked behind the house?
It's when you drive by from the one side, it's basically right on the back of the house.
Okay. So you can see it from the road?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to show you Exhibit 19, which you've already described as the Hummer. Is that where you observed it parked?
Yes.
All right. You get home, go to bed, do whatever you do. What do you do Sunday morning when you wake up?
I woke up and went over to my mom's house.
Okay. Do you know approximately what time?
Eight 8:30, 9 o'clock.
Okay. Who went over to your mom's house with you?
Me and Dustin and our kids.
All right. And was that for your Sunday breakfast?
Yes.
All right. What'd you do when you got there?
We went in and just kind of started making breakfast. And then I texted my mom and asked her what she was doing. I believe that's what I asked. And I didn't get a response.
Okay. And does your phone tell you if a message doesn't go through?
I don't know.
Okay. So you texted your mom, asked her what she was doing. Did you observe her in the house?
No.
All right. Then what'd you do?
I kind of walked around the house a little bit to see if anybody was there, and nobody was there.
Okay. When you say you walked around the house, where all did you go at that point in time?
The living room is like right off of the kitchen, so I looked in the living room, and then in her bedroom.
Okay. What'd you do after that?
And then I remembered that I saw the Hummer parked down at the office along with the JCB, so I figured she was at the office.
Okay, so when you arrived there Sunday morning, you saw the JCB and the Hummer parked outside the office?
Correct.
All right. And so you walk down to the office, what do you do?
I didn't go down to the office at that point.
Okay.
I think we just ate some breakfast and then we left
Okay, where'd you go?
to my house.
All right, what'd you do from there?
I called my mom.
Did she answer?
No,
Okay. Did the phone ring?
no.
What'd you do after that?
I went back down to the office to see if my little sister was down there
Why would you be going down there to see if your little sister was down there?
because I thought they were fighting in the office.
When you say they, who are you referring to?
My mom and Dale.
All right, and so you were gonna go get your sister or something?
Yes.
All right. Did you go in the office?
Yes.
All right, and what'd you see?
Nothing.
Okay. What'd you do after that?
I left. I think I left again and went back to my house and called my siblings and anybody that I thought would know where she was.
Okay, when you said you called your siblings, who all did you call?
I called Zach and Amber.
Okay, did you call TJ?
I don't think I had called him yet at that point.
All right. After you talked to Zach and Amber, what'd you do?
I sent a message to Stephanie
Stephanie who?
Vogel
Okay.
and Shelly. No, I don't think I called Shelly at that point yet.
Okay. I'm gonna stop you. Who is Stephanie Vogel?
All right, so it looks like mom can't be found. And if she went away or left, as said by Dale, she would have taken her Hummer, but her Hummer never really left the same parking space it always was in, at least according to her daughter. And just to remind you, both of them, Dale and Dee, had previous marriages. Both of them had 4 children in those marriages. They had none together, so she's the daughter of Dee, but she's not Dale's daughter. All right, we'll take a break. When we come back, more testimony in the murder trial against Dale Warner. Keep it here on Court TV.
Dee Warner is accused of murdering his wife, Dee.
After years of searching, her remains are found
Sealed inside a welded shut storage tank.
The hidden murder of Dee Warner. Live coverage today on Court TV.
I'm Vinny Politan. Welcome to Closing Arguments.
What's happening here?
It's unreal. Let me show you exactly what happened.
Closing Arguments with Vinny Politan. Tonight at 8/7 Central. Only on Court TV.
Welcome back, folks. We're in Michigan today for day 1 of the murder trial for Dale Warner. Warner is accused of killing his wife, Dee, back in 2021. Her remains were found inside of a welded shut tank, large tank, on a property belonging to Dale. Still on the stand is one of Dee's daughters. She's testifying on direct about the moment that she went to her mother's house for Sunday breakfast and realized she wasn't there.
She was my mom's secretary.
All right. And do you know if her and your mom were close?
Yes,
You know, or they are? They were.
they were.
Okay. And okay, you sent Stephanie a message, and then I'm sorry. Did you say you called Shelly, or you?
I don't think I called her yet at that point.
Okay. So after you left a message for Stephanie, what'd you do after that?
Then we drove. We drove to my uncle's farm.
All right. Who's your uncle?
Greg.
Greg who?
Greg Hardy.
All right. Why did you drive over there?
Because I thought maybe she was down there, my mom.
All right. Why did you think that she might be down there?
Because sometimes when my mom and Dale would fight, she would go to Shelly and Greg's.
All right, and so who is Shelly?
Greg's wife.
All right, so your Aunt Shelly and Uncle Greg?
Correct.
All right, and how far from the Munger farm did they live?
Mile, maybe.
Okay, so everybody kind of lives pretty close together.
Yes.
All right, so do you talk to Greg and Shelly at that point?
Yeah. I talked to Shelly. No, I didn't see anybody. I'm sorry.
Okay, and then where'd you go?
I went to Shelly and Greg's house,
Okay,
which is another mile or so down the road.
all right. Did you talk to him at that point?
I talked to Shelly.
All right, and what'd you do from there?
Shelly came along with us then, and we went up to the property in Onstead.
Okay, when you say Shelly came along with us, are you still with Dustin and the kids?
Yes.
All right, so it's you, Dustin, the kids, and Shelly.
Yes.
All right, and you went to the property in Onstead. Can you give me a location?
The Cedar Point property.
Okay.
Or do you need a road?
If you know the road, that'd be great.
It was off of M50.
M50?
Yeah.
Okay. And M50 and Tipton, does that sound?
No, M50 and Onstead Highway.
Onstead Highway, okay. So you guys load up, drive out to you call it the Cedar Point property?
Yes.
All right, what do you do at Cedar Point?
We pulled in, and Dustin went in to see into the barn to see if she was in there.
Okay, and?
She was not there.
Okay. What'd you do after that?
Came back to my mom's house.
And then?
Looked around the house some more just to see if we missed something maybe the first time.
All right, so this time, where all did you look when you go back to the house?
Pretty much everywhere. The garage, her car was there. We went in, her bedroom or bathroom, and then we went upstairs to the bedrooms.
Okay. What did you do after you looked through the house and you can't find her?
I kind of stayed up there. Dustin went down to the office.
Okay. Did you at any point in time call Dale and ask, where's Mom?
He called me.
Okay. Do you know when he called you?
He called me when I was at my Aunt Shirley and Uncle Greg's farm.
Okay. Did you have a conversation with him?
Yes.
What'd you guys talk about?
He asked me if I had talked to my mom.
All right. So he called you looking for your mom?
Yes.
All right, why?
Because somebody had called him. I think Stephanie called him. And Stephanie told him that I was looking for my mom.
All right. So does he say anything else about your mom?
That they got into, no. No, I think I asked where Lena was, and he told me that she was at her aunt and uncle's house.
Okay. Did he say anything else?
In that phone call?
Did he tell you where your mom was at when he left the house?
He said that she was sleeping on the couch when he left at 6 a.m.
Okay. And you hang up with him, then what happens?
And then that's when we went to Shelly's, and then,
Okay, all right.
so then we came back to the house.
So at some point when you come back to the house, does Dale arrive at the house?
Yes.
All right. Do you have a conversation with him?
Yes.
All right. And what's the first contact you make with Dale when he comes back to the house? Where's that at?
In my mom's bedroom.
All right. And I'm going to show you Exhibit 2. Okay. What's that?
My mom's bedroom.
Okay. And is that where you had a conversation with Dale?
Yes.
All right. What do you guys talk about?
He asked me if I knew about my mom had he asked me if I knew that my mom had a secret phone. He said that she's been leaving in the middle of the night and and then he said that she's got pills everywhere. And then he showed me that she left her ring on the desk in the office, on his desk.
Okay, so you're looking for your mom, and he says to you she's been leaving in the middle of the night. She's got all these pills, and here's her ring. Is that a yes?
Yes.
Okay, does he say anything else to you?
At that point, I don't think so.
Okay. Do you have any other discussion with Dale about the fact that you can't find your mom anywhere?
Yes.
All right, and what do you guys talk about?
It kind of led into the back into the kitchen, and he opened up the medicine cabinet and started talking about the pills again, and then said, everything I've worked for is gone.
Okay. Did you ask him what he meant by that?
No.
All right. What else did he say?
I don't really remember.
Did he tell you that they had any discussion or any fight the night before?
Objection leading.
If you don't remember, can I refresh her? I'd like to refresh your recollection. Do you remember that conversation?
Yes.
Okay. What else did Dale say to you about their conversation that night?
Well, he told me that they barely fought, and he gave her a massage. She fell asleep, and he picked her up and put her on the couch. And in their fight, he asked her if she loved him, and he said, you know, through sickness and in health, and for rich or for poor, and so on. He read her the vows, essentially.
Okay, so he said they're fighting, and he read her their vows.
Yes.
Okay. Do you stay there and continue to talk to Dale, or what do you do after you have that conversation with him?
He ended up leaving the house. I stayed just a little bit longer, and then I left.
All right. Where did you go?
I dropped my kids off at a friend's house.
Did you talk to Dale about any concerns you had, or what you wanted to do next because you couldn't find your mom?
Yeah.
All right, and what did you want to do?
I wanted
All
to...
right, let me bring back in my guest, still with us, trial and family law attorney Michelle Thomas. And Michelle, there's a lot to discuss there, a lot to pick apart. But first and foremost, I want to ask you, as someone who's been involved in family law, trial law as well, this kind of presents on some level as a regular old DV case where you have a woman who's ready to leave. She goes and tells the person, I'm leaving, and that might prompt some sort of violence. And not only leaving, but also going to end a business that they had together. But then I look at it and I say, well, there were signs. There was this stalking where he was tracking her car. There was some verbal abuse. There was some abuse by a text that we saw, but no physical abuse. it's kind of rare to go from no physical abuse at all to murder. What do you make of that aspect of the case?
That's exactly right, Michael. And that stood out to me that typically there's a progression of violence that may start with something, sort of minor, and then it builds up to where there's physical abuse one time, an apology, and then another incident of physical abuse until you get to this point where it is possible that a murder or a crime could have been committed. However, in this case, the defendant's behavior is quite suspicious, both with his lack of concern about his wife, whose whereabouts he allegedly doesn't know, and then also his effort to sort of build this narrative to his stepdaughter and try to create this explanation as to why she may be missing before there's an actual concern. So that is quite suspicious, and I would think that the jury would be skeptical of that type of narrative coming from the defendant that early in the process.
Yeah, we see that so many times in these cases where the person who's alleged to have committed the crime creates this narrative when someone asks about the person they're alleged to have killed. But there was one little thing I picked up where he said, everything I worked for is gone. And that took me back to the idea that she was going to end this trucking company. She was going to end their relationship. And I think that statement by him suggests how serious that whole thing was and could have provided motive. And I got about 30 seconds here.
Yeah, you have to follow the money. And when they mentioned the fact that she was going to end the trucking business, that is certainly enough to fuel the fire and cause him to commit this crime.
Yeah, it raises it all to another level in my mind. All right, Michelle Thomas, thank you so much as always for joining us today. We'll see you again real soon. Folks, I want you to stick around coming up because we're going to have more key testimony in the murder trial against Dee Warner when we come back. So keep it here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala, and we are tracking several cases here at Court TV this afternoon. In New Jersey, a jury has been deliberating, actually has been instructed by the judge right now before they can actually begin deliberating the fate of Paul Canero. He's accused of killing his brother and his brother's family. We'll start the clock right there. We'll have it up there for you once deliberations do begin. And in North Carolina, it's day 7 of sentencing for Austin Thompson. He pleaded guilty to a shooting spree. Now a judge has to decide if he'll spend life behind bars with or without parole. And in Florida, it's day 2 of testimony for defendant Waymore Gerhardt, who faces a top count of first-degree murder in the death of a 14-year-old girl. And in Massachusetts, a status conference begins next hour in the wrongful death lawsuit between the family of John O'Keefe, Karen Reed, and the restaurants that the two partied at on the night of O'Keefe's death. And of course, we'll keep a close eye on all of those cases and fill you in if anything happens. But right now, we're in Michigan for the trial against Dee Warner. He's accused of killing his wife after her remains were found in a sealed tank on their property. On the stand now is Dee's daughter. She's still facing direct examination by the state, so let's go back into court.
I wanted to call the hospitals to see if she had checked herself in somewhere, phone records, call the police.
Okay, what would you call the police for?
Missing person.
All right. And did you tell Dale that you wanted to do that?
Yes.
And how did he respond?
He said, well, I'll take Lena to school in the morning, and then if she's not back by then, I'll stop by the police department.
Okay. Throughout the course of your mom's marriage to Dale, did you know her to leave at times?
Yeah.
Okay. And so it wasn't common for her to leave for, do you know how long she would leave for?
Maybe a day, maybe 2.
All right. And how long do you think your mom was married to Dale?
15 years.
Okay. In the course of that 15 years, the times that you have knowledge of, how many times do you think your mom left for a day or two?
Maybe every couple of months,
okay.
At least.
Every couple of months over 15 years, so maybe a couple hundred?
Yeah.
Okay. Had you ever called the police to report her missing prior to this?
No.
All right. And did you end up calling the police?
Yes.
All right. Do you recall, was that on that Sunday, the 25th?
Yes.
All right. Did you have the opportunity to look at a somewhat mild autopsy photograph of your mother's clothing?
Yes.
All right. And did you recognize the clothing that she was found in?
Yes.
And what was she wearing?
Pajamas.
Okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I just have some questions for you. You testified that you went over to your mom's house basically every day leading up to her going missing?
Correct.
And how long had that been going on for?
Since October of 2020.
And you also testified that you lived there when you were younger as well?
Yes.
In the house. You personally observed yelling between Mr. Warner and Miss Warner?
Yes.
You'd classify your mom as a yeller?
Yes.
I think we just established that your mom, Miss Warner, was known to randomly leave for a day or two throughout the 15 years that she was married to Mr. Warner.
Yes.
And it was also common for her to say that she was done with her marriage.
Yes.
It wasn't surprising when she would say things like that to you.
No.
Would you often consider it just talk?
Yeah.
It was also common for her to say that she was done with her businesses as well.
No.
Ms. Saylor, I'm going to have you play for Ms. Bock GWOD 06 3418 to 3440, please. 3418 to 3440. $34.18 to $34.40. Did you hear that?
I did, but that's not.
You told the police that your mother, Miss Warner, would commonly say that she was done with the marriages and done with businesses.
Done with the marriages.
You also said she was done with the businesses, and that's what she told your brother that day, and that was a common thing.
That's not exactly how it was meant.
But that's what you said?
I mean, I guess if that's not exactly, she was commonly saying she was done with the marriage with Dale, but that was the first time I'd heard her say that she was going to sell the businesses.
Your mom suffered from chronic migraines?
Yes.
And she also had chronic neck pain?
Yes.
to put a time frame on this common topic of bringing up divorce. In the months leading up to April 2021, that was frequently when she would talk about wanting a divorce, correct?
Before they even got married.
Okay, so it was frequent all the time. Speaking of April, you testified on direct April 24, 2021. You saw the Hummer in the back of your mother's house on Munger.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And it was pulled up to the glass, sliding glass doors.
Yes.
When you were driving on Munger Road, were you driving toward Carson Highway or away from Carson Highway?
Away from Carson Highway.
And when you were driving, was the Munger house on your right?
Yes.
When you...
All right, we'll step aside here, folks. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll get you back in that courtroom. Keep it here on Court TV.
In 2021, Dee Warner vanished without a trace.
Dale Warner. He's accused of murdering his wife, Dee. Rumors of a troubled marriage spread throughout this small community.
She had contemplated divorce several times.
Now, after years of searching for Dee Warner,
her remains are found on the couple's property.
Sealed inside a welded shut storage tank.
we're still going to fight to the end to see that she gets her justice.
The hidden murder of Dee Warner. Live coverage today on Court TV.
Back now to Michigan, where a man is on trial for allegedly killing his wife nearly 5 years ago. Prosecutors say Dale Warner had a history of violence before ultimately strangling his wife, Dee Warner, back in April of 2021. But Warner maintains his innocence. He says that Dee left on her own accord after the couple had a disagreement. Still on the stand is Dee Warner's daughter, Rikkell. She's now facing cross by the defense.
When you saw the Hummer, was it when you were approaching the house, when you were in front of the house, when you were driving away? At what point did you see the Hummer back there?
As I was approaching the house.
Do you know where exactly you were in relation to the intersection of Carson Highway and Munger Road?
I guess it would be sort of in front of that big door that was in the same building as the office.
Okay, so you were outside the office building and the big garage door that Miss Weiss had mentioned?
Yeah, which is where the road is.
I want to move to April 25th. You went over around 9:30 a.m. to your mother's house?
Yes.
And you just walked right in, you didn't knock?
Right.
That's something that you would typically do?
Yes.
The door was unlocked?
Yes.
You couldn't find your mom, so you went back outside?
No.
After you were in the house, you were there for a certain amount of time, you eventually left the house?
Right, yes.
And so you went back outside, you went to your house?
Yes.
And when you sat in your driveway, that's when you made the phone calls?
Yes.
After you made those phone calls, then you went back to the office on Munger?
Right.
When you got to the office, you just walked in?
Yes.
At that point, when you had gotten to the office, none of your siblings were there yet?
No.
The door, was it unlocked when you had walked in?
The trucker's side office doors were unlocked more than the main office doors were unlocked, so yes.
And you used that door?
Yes.
At some point after that, you also went back to your mother's house and looked around?
Yes.
You walked around the property on the farm?
I did, yes.
And when you had arrived to the Warner home on April 25th, you didn't see any stains on the couch?
No.
You didn't see any marks on the couch?
No.
You didn't see any stains or marks on the carpet?
No.
At one point, you were in the office with your brother, Zach, is that correct?
Yes.
And you looked at the camera surveillance videos?
Yes.
And you were able to view them because your brother, Zach, had access to the cameras?
Correct.
That day, April 25th, Mr. Warner was acting how he typically acts?
Yeah.
And he actually told you that Miss Warner would come back?
Yeah.
He thought she voluntarily left?
Yes.
And that's why he didn't feel the need to call the police or do anything at that point in time?
Correct.
To your knowledge, Mr. Warner would use the JCB that we saw in that photo to move trash around from place to place.
Correct.
And he would drive it to the office, he'd drive it to the house to collect the trash?
Yes.
And then he would dump it out in the back?
Yes.
Your mom, she liked attention. Would you agree?
Yeah.
And she was dramatic.
Yeah.
And she would overreact to situations.
Yep.
I have no further questions.
So over the 15 years, the many times the topic of divorce came up, was there something different about this time, in your opinion?
In my opinion, yes.
Okay, what did you observe that made you feel this was different?
Because my mom is a reactor and she's going to yell and have an argument, but this time she was almost calm.
Okay. Nothing further.
I have nothing further.
She can be excused, Your Honor.
No objection. Thank you.
Thank you. You are.
All right, that does it for Dee Warner's daughter, Rikkell. Let me bring in our guest for this hour. Joining us, trial attorney and jury consultant Wendy Patrick. Wendy, great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me today on the program. Let's talk about Rikkell and her testimony. I thought it was very strong for the state. And that last little piece there on redirect I thought was very strong because I think in common sense, which is what we always ask from jurors, you know exactly what she's talking about. People who tend to be a little dramatic and they might go off. And as we heard, she had a tendency to say, oh, I'm tired, I'm over this relationship, et cetera, et cetera. But she said there was something different about this time. And, you know, I immediately said, I know exactly what she's talking about.
Well, it's true that we do know exactly what she's talking about. I think the bigger question is which side benefits most by those admissions. Because remember, you don't need to prove murder, you don't need to prove motive to prove murder. But when you have a business relationship gone bad or something different about going off the handle, talking about divorce, being dramatic, does that make it more likely that we're proving motive or something else? And that's one of the tricky things, Michael, about a case like this, where it's within the family and you have a daughter testifying about some facts that under different circumstances might mean something totally different to a trier of fact. I thought it was interesting about the pajamas and the autopsy. You know, there are just some factors here that might not square with a particular line of defense. And it's always engaging to have one or both lawyers sort of cut off an examination all of a sudden, leaving jurors thinking, where are they going to go with that? And that, of course, is something they'll be reminding them of in closing argument, but most likely way before then.
I'm glad you picked out the pajamas because that was my next question. I actually wrote it down and I said, you know, this was an important piece of testimony. It's a little too strong, I think, to call it a smoking gun. But I thought, based on what we heard just prior, which is where the defendant was telling her, look, we had an argument, she left. And then you find out, first of all, her car was still there. But secondly, in those autopsy photos, she's in pajamas. I said to myself, man, that's an important little piece of testimony. I hope, and again, sometimes, you have to sort of highlight certain testimony. I hope it didn't go over the jurors' heads, because I certainly made a note of it, and I'm glad you did as well. What are your thoughts?
No way did it go over the jurors' heads. You know, one thing I've always noticed sitting in a courtroom, sort of kind of peeking over to see what they pick up on, something like that, they would start furiously scribbling in notebooks or writing it down, or they'd be, I mean, that's the kind of thing that's going to catch everybody's attention, simply because of the way it contradicts some of what you might expect would be the defense. So yes, it is true. And you know, sometimes as lawyers, we like to pause after we deliver a zinger or elicit something that really helps our side of the case. But whether or not that happens, I mean, that's why we have 12 people sitting in the box. One of them is going to notice, and likely with something like that, all of them is going to have written that down and then use it back in the deliberation room to say, yes, but then we can't forget, why then would she have been in pajamas? So it's a huge piece of evidence, definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. And on one level, Wendy, I see this as a basic domestic violence case, right? This is that point in a relationship where things aren't going well. And again, I haven't heard anything about physical abuse. There certainly was some verbal abuse during text messages, the fights they would have, etc. He was kind of stalking her, right? He had trying to get her phone cloned. Those are all forms of abuse, but nothing physical. But I still see this as that moment when a woman decides, I'm done with this, I'm leaving. And then you have the added point where she says, I'm going to end this trucking business as well. I'm going to sell it. And I think all that put together really puts that in the category of a domestic violence case.
You know, that combination of motives and that really culmination of drama, you know, saying she's going to get a divorce now and being dramatic and now talking about ending the business. It is true. You don't have any of that. We don't have any physical abuse. At least we don't know about any of that. But I have to say, one of the other things, Michael, that strikes me about what you just pointed out is the degree to which the average juror is familiar with that kind of a dispute, whether or not it involves physical violence. We try to weed that out of jurors on voir dire, but we only get as much as they're willing to admit. Sometimes they think to themselves, well, there was no physical violence, so I don't have to explain to the lawyers about that scenario. So you wonder whether anybody in that jury is going to be relating to this viscerally or just sort of on a level where they're going to decide one way or another how they think that either helps the defendant's case or whether it helps the prosecution.
That's a great point, because sometimes, you know, we forget. We're very knowledgeable in this area. We see this stuff all the time. Jurors don't necessarily have that same level of knowledge, again, so that's a great point.